2 months after the man willed the prestige hospital to me, I took over at the hospital. All the paperwork had been done, and so everything was now mine. The first thing I did when I started work at the hospital was to find out if my uncle was still using the hospital, and discovered he was. I quickly put an order that he should be treated free of charge from that day onwards. A day after I took over, a huge amount of money was transferred into the hospital's bank account from a foundation. The money ran into hundreds of millions of naira, and immediately I saw it, fear gripped me. A lot of things began to run through my mind. First, I said, is this a setup to incriminate me? I said to myself that maybe the reason why the man willed the hospital to me was so that I will be held for fraud should the authority come after the hospital. After thinking it through, I decided to call the man that willed the hospital to me to tell him. As soon as he picked up the call, he said, "Doctor, I was about to call you to inquire if you'd seen the money that was transferred into the hospital's account." As soon as he said it, I heaved a sigh of relief. I told him I was calling because of the money and explained how scared I was. As soon as I said that, he laughed a prolonged laughter and eventually said, "I instructed the managers of my wife and I's foundation to pay the money into that account. You said you wanted to build hospitals, so you'll need enough money to build as many hospitals as you want," he said, and hung up before I could thank him. I sat still, dumbfounded. Me, a girl that grew up in a slum, who slept on the mat beside my mom in one small room, is now so rich that I can afford all the good things of life, I said to myself. Tears began to trickle down my cheeks as I thought of my mom and wished she was alive so I could fulfill the promise I made to her when I was a kid. Then I had told her that I was going to study hard and build her a big house when I grew up. Now, I have the opportunity of building her that big house, but my mom is in the grave. I began to cry. I was still crying when someone knocked on my door. 6 months later, I opened a hospital where my mom was living. I purchased the house where my mom was living and 4 other adjoining houses, broke them down, built a hospital, and named it after my mom. I had my office in that new hospital because I wanted to make sure that those who couldn't afford to pay will be attended to. I visited the Prestige Hospital once a week. On one of the days I visited, the accountant told me that my uncle had been there twice and wanted to know why he was not being charged for his treatments. He wanted to know if they should tell him I gave the approval, and I said they shouldn't tell him. One day, I was in a hospital I named after my mom, and some people rushed in with a sick old man. He was so tiny and wasn't talking. From his looks, he'd been without medication for a very long time. "Why did you leave him to get to this stage before bringing him to the hospital?" I asked those who brought the man in, and they said they didn't know he was sick, that he lived alone. As I got closer and saw his face closely, I recognized him. He was the owner of the pharmacy that let my mom die just because of 50,000 naira. 50,000 naira is just about $30. Immediately, I began to sit with anger. Not wanting to let the nurses or those that brought the man to notice anything, I left the nurses to do their job and went into my office. As I sat down on my chair, everything that happened the day my mom died flooded my brain. I remember the way I knelt before the man and pleaded continuously, and the way he collected the money that someone gave me, put it into a locker, and said he wasn't going to go with me until the whole money was paid. That same man is now in my hospital, dying and at my mercy. Should I avenge my mom's death? Should I give him some injection that will kill him gradually? Or do I just tell those who brought him in to take him out of the hospital? Not decided on what to do, I chose to leave it until the next day. It's better to sleep over such issues, I said to myself as I picked up my car key, went downstairs, and left the hospital without speaking to anyone. The next day, still undecided on what to do to the man that killed my mom, I decided to avoid that hospital, and instead I went to work at the Prestige Hospital. That day, as I was going around the wards to check on the patients, I stumbled on my uncle in one of the executive rooms. He was shocked when he saw me. I sat down on the chair next to his bed and asked him how he was doing. Instead of answering my questions, he asked what I was doing there. I laughed aloud and said, "I own this hospital, uncle." Immediately, he sat up and said, "Oh, that's the secret. You told them to stop charging me, right? Now I understand. How did you come about this, or are you just pulling my legs?" he questioned. I went on to tell him everything that happened from when I got into Nigeria. After I finished, he said, "No wonder the Bible says that he that gives to the poor lends to God." He apologized for the way he treated me, and I told him it wasn't his fault, that he meant well for me. Few days after the man that refused to help my mom was admitted, I had a dream. In the dream, I saw my mom looking at me and at the same time pointing to the sick man that I believed killed her and said, "Do not pay back evil with evil." She said it twice, and as I wanted to say something, she disappeared and I woke up suddenly. That same day, I went to the hospital and went to see the man. He was looking a bit better than he was the day he was brought to the hospital. After asking him how he was feeling, I asked him if he knew who I was, and he said he didn't. I then told him everything. As I spoke, tears welled up in his eyes. "I am so sorry, my daughter, forgive me. I have lost everything. My wife and the only 2 children that I have died in a ghastly motor accident, and that was after I was duped and had to close down the pharmacy," he said. "Sorry about your losses," I said. "Don't worry, as soon as you are well, I will give you a job in the pharmacy department. At least that should keep you going." As soon as I finished saying that, I saw his face lit up, and then I knew he'd get well sooner than later because hope maketh alive. People, learn to do the best that you can for anyone because you never know what the next chapter holds. And please, never pay back evil with evil. It's a golden law. Please subscribe to this channel, comment, share, and please check out our other beautiful stories. Thank you.